Welcome to Modern Latin America in 15 minutes. My name is Dr. Kim Richardson, and today we're discussing Lecture 2, which is the Late Colonial Period. This is a super abbreviated version of some very, very important events, less than 15 minutes. In the end of the 17th century, the king was Charles II, also known as the Bewitched. He was a Habsburg. He deeded over his empire upon his death to the Bourbons, the enemies of the Habsburgs. In particular, he gave it to Philip V. He was known then as Philip of Anjou, the grandson of Louis XIV. That's a bad idea, and it led to the War of Spanish Succession. This war pitted many parts of Europe with many other parts of Europe. In this war, that is one of the first worldwide wars. Even in North America, we call it Queen Anne's War, as it was fought here as well. Well, in the end of this war, 1701 to 1713, Philip V and the Bourbons win. Today, the King of Spain is, no surprise, a Bourbon, Philip VI, as his father abdicated to him fairly recently, last year. At the end of this war in 1713, you have the Treaty of Utrecht, as the victors and the losers came together in order to sign this ceasefire. Spain then is going to face some problems. The problems are going to be are going to try to be reformed by the Bourbons, the new monarchs. Ferdinand VI, Charles III in particular, the Bourbon reformers. So the problem is this. The Bourbons fought a war against the Habsburg. They won, but now they have a military which is not doing too hot. They have an economy which is not doing too hot, so they're going to have to seek to fix it. That's what they're going to do. These are called the Bourbon Reforms. They inherit a bankrupt and war-torn empire. Their Bourbon reforms are going to be military, economic, and administrative, and then the last, which is not truly a reform, clerical. Military, they're going to try to create militias. They're going to try to reinforce the northern territories. They're going to try to strengthen the military so they can protect themselves. Economic, they're going to have many things such as free trade within the empire. They're going to increase the number of viceroyalties. They're going to have economic revamping of the system. Administrative, they're going to try to do away with some of the corrupt practices of the administrators and create a more a type of practice such as intendants, in which the crown can have more direct control over the peoples, the administrators that they send to the Americas to govern. So in other words, what you have is military, economic, and administrative reforms, and they're called Bourbon. The last reforms, the Bourbon reforms, is clerical. And the reason why I say clerical reforms is what they're really trying to do here is have the crown take more control over the church. Because over the years, the church has become more and more powerful at the expense of the crown. And they're trying to reform that. And one of the major things they do is by kicking out all of the Jesuit expulsions at this period. In Portugal, you don't have the Bourbon reforms because the Bourbons are not in Portugal. But you do have the Marquis de Pombal, and he is going to institute those reforms, and they're going to be known as the Pombaline Reforms. They're the same thing. They're going to, for example, have economic reforms, clerical reforms, military reforms, and administrative reforms, although the administrative reforms were never as extensive in the Portuguese territories as the Spanish territories. An emphasis that needs to be pointed out at this point, after or during the Bourbon and Pombaline reforms, is the Enlightenment. We know about the Enlightenment because we learn it in elementary school. Northern and European Enlightenment is what we learn about, though. It's similar to the Iberian in these two categories, science and economics. They both believe that science should be emphasized, and economics, many people start arguing for things such as, in 1776, the wealth of nations, free trade. Now, so in other words, many of the Enlightenment thinkers are looking to science and economy and the economics. But this is where it differs, and we have to know this, because Northern European Enlightenment, they question governmental authority. We declare independence in North America, and of course, France chops off the head of Louis XVI. In Iberia, they do not question governmental authority. Therefore, when independence comes, it will not be a revolution, as opposed to North America, you could argue it is a revolution. In Northern European Enlightenment, they question religion. North America, we have freedom of religion. In France, they're going to, for a while, establish their own religion and kick out the clerics. So, freedom of religion, they question religion at least. They do not do that in Iberia. Therefore, they do not do that in the Americas. Therefore, in the Americas, all the newly minted countries, when they come about, are going to have Catholicism embedded into the Constitution. They don't question religion. So, if the first thing we talk about is the Bourbon Reforms, the second is going to be this Enlightenment. The third and final thing is going to say the Bourbon Reforms are going to cause, as well as Enlightenment thinking, tax, riots, and rebellions. 3 of many will suffice to emphasize what I'm talking about. The Tupac Amaru Rebellion, Comunero Revolt, and the Inconfidencia Mineira. They all occur in the early 1780s. The first one, 1780 to 81, is the Tupac Amaru Rebellion, as this guy, Tupac Amaru, self-proclaimed Tupac Amaru, is going to rise up in rebellion in the Viceroyalty of Peru, right over here. This rebellion people are very upset, above all else, because they have the mita, which is the apartamiento, the labor system. They're upset that they're having to give that labor. They're upset as well that they're having to deal with corrupt officials, even though the Bourbon Reforms is supposed to get rid of the corrupt officials. They're upset at the Bourbon Reforms' increase of the alcabala, or the sales tax, and they want many other taxes to be abolished as well. Soon, they're going to declare for independence, the expulsion of the Peninsulares, and the Inca state with himself as the king. So they're rising up in a tax riot or rebellion. He was captured and executed in 1781, as this very gruesome picture can demonstrate, because the crown is much more powerful than the people. Second great example of the rebellion is the Comunero Revolt. This one occurs in the Viceroyalty of New Granada. It's called Comuneros because they formed a central committee called Comuns, and they also want to get rid of sales taxes, alcabala, and other taxes. In this case, the other taxes were tobacco, the tax on tobacco, and the poll tax. So they rose up in rebellion as well, and as you can imagine, surprise, surprise, they're going to be defeated just like the Tupac Amaru rebellion. Their slogan, our cry, was Viva el Rey y muera el mal gobierno. Long live the king, but, and this is key, down with bad government, death to bad government. Meaning that they're still loyal. They don't question the authority of the king, but they are upset at the Bourbon Reforms, at least in this case here. And they're going to be crushed. The third rebellion, coming at the end of that decade, is going to be the Inconfidencia Mineira. I include this here because we want to emphasize that the Portuguese, Brazil, is a very active part of this Spanish-American history. The Portuguese-American, in this case, Latin American history. Now, in this case, they established reforms as well, including the creation of something called a derrama, or a head tax. And they did this because there was so much smuggling coming out of Minas Gerais, which was the gold and the diamonds that were being smuggled out, that they need to find some way to enforce the collection of taxes, and this seemed like a good idea. However, this uprising occurred, just like the other two, in order to lower the taxes. Many people were involved, but of course one of the most important, and the scapegoat, was João King José da Silva Xavier, which becomes known as Tiradentes, because this guy had two things going for him in a bad way, so to speak. One is that the other guys were Creoles, they were lighter skinned, and so they got a slap on the wrist. This guy was not, so he is going to be executed as the culprit of this. The second thing that he had going for him, hence his name, is Tiradentes. He was a soldier, and he did not, as many soldiers found out at the time, make enough money simply by soldiering as a militia person. So he would be a dentist and he'd pull out teeth, chita, or take out the dentures, the teeth. So he's known as Tiradentes. He is going to be blamed for this uprising, this anti-tax uprising, and then in the end he too is going to be executed. I love these 19th century images in which they depict him almost as a Christ-like figure going to be executed as a result.